how would you validate a Trinitarian view where you have three persons, one essence, when the Scripture says specifically it's one God only and the begotten Son?
So let me start on this one. So we have this story where Abraham is approached by three beings, okay? And what we understand those to be is the Lord and two angels, right? And so they come to Abraham and they're talking about Sodom and Gomorrah. We see Abraham kind of bargaining with the Lord on the destruction of Sodom. The two angels go on to the city to kind of investigate things, and then the Lord stays and has a presence with him, right? And so, but yet this is, what we believe within Christianity. You might disagree with, but this is a pre-incarnate Christ that we're seeing there. Because the question is, while, pre-incarnate Christ is here, who's sending fire from heaven to destroy that? Did he leave some angel up there in charge to pull the lever? Did God step out of heaven to be there in that moment? And so what I would say is that I would refute your claim, and I would just say that, look, I don't believe the Trinity was created by man. Now, the terminology of Trinity, we over time have given words to describe something that's true of God, but you can see this throughout the Scripture. We see this in Genesis chapter 1, where it says, let us make man in our image. We see it talk about also, the idea of that the Spirit of God was hovering, over the surface of the deep. The Trinity is baked into the Scriptures, and there are multiple theophanies that we see in the Old Testament that would point to, at least the Jews had an understanding of a two-part nature to God at minimum, yet we didn't have, Christ, fully there, but they understood the difference between the Spirit of the God and Yahweh, the Father. And so, I think that to me, a leading away from the Trinity, although the Trinity is hard for us to understand and it feels paradoxical, I think that's exactly what a God that is a unique being, that there is no one else like him in the entire universe, would be like. If God were just like any one of us, where he's just one person, one nature, that is problematic, I think, because there's not a uniqueness to him. I think that also the other thing that separates Allah from Yahweh is the Trinity. I'm combining these. That's a Star Wars character, I think. Allah is, when you ask a Muslim what was God doing for all eternity, they would say loving himself, that he didn't love the world, he loved himself. If you ask a Christian what was God doing for all eternity, what they would say is that the Father was loving the Son, and the Son was loving the Father. In the Trinity is the only way to explain a truly selfless God. And I think that anything less than that makes God a tyrant.
Can I follow up to that?
Please.
So Isaiah 45, 5 and 6, Isaiah 46, 9 and 10, and Deuteronomy 32, 39 makes it very clear that only the Father is God. So whenever you look at Revelations 22:13, you get, I am the Alpha, the Omega, the beginning and the end, the first and the last. This is Christ talking. And Revelations is a revelation that Christ gave to John. So he's saying that I'm the beginning of creation. And so if you look at what the beginning of creation is, that's Genesis 1:3. That's the begotten moment of the creation of the soul of Christ. The image that you're talking about in Genesis 1:26, that's the indwelling, that's the communion that we have with the Father.
Let me ask you this. So does God change?
God doesn't change.
Okay. So when did God become a creator then?
He's always been his essence.
Okay, so I want you to work through the logic of this. If God was always a creator, that means that there had to have been a creation. As Christians, what we believe is that the Son is eternally begotten. So the only reason that God has an eternal essence of being a creator is because the Son is eternally begotten of the Father.
But the same logic is if there's a beginning, that's a starting point. So you can't have eternally begotten. It's the same logic.
I would disagree with that. You believe God is eternal. But what I'm saying is, if you think that God if he became a creator, because the first time that God creates is, right, that we see is in Genesis chapter 1. And so if you're saying that, this is also the problem, I think with Islam to some extent too. The question is, when did God become a father? Did God become a father in Genesis 1? Did he become a father, before that, when he made, is your belief that Christ is a creation?
Yes.
Okay. And so, Christianity, what Orthodox Christianity would teach is that the Son is eternally begotten. Okay. So he's of the same essence. Jesus isn't created, but he's eternally emanating from the Father, which gives God the attribute of Father. If Christ is not eternally begotten from him, that means at some point God became a father. When I don't have kids, my wife and I have lost several children. If we delivered a child, I would become a father, right? And so, but I'm not a father right now because I don't have children, and so I don't possess that. But the moment we have a child, now I'm a father. So the belief, a belief that does not embrace the Trinity, believes that God changes because it believes that He became a father the moment that He created something to be the father of, and I think that there's a fault in your logic there.
Let me just add one thing to that. It's been said this way, that it would be strange if an infinite God wasn't strange to us. And what might help this discussion, as Lucas said, can we completely comprehend this? No. But we can apprehend something even if we can't completely comprehend it. You can stand in front of an ocean and apprehend there's an ocean in front of you, even if you can't completely comprehend everything going on in that ocean. Now, when we look at God in the Trinity, and particularly Jesus, we have to keep in mind that Jesus is one person with two natures. He has a divine nature and a human nature. Did the human nature have a beginning? Yes. Did the divine nature have a beginning? No. So whenever you ask a question about Jesus, you always have to ask two questions. Did Jesus get hungry? As man, yes. As God, no. Did Jesus know all things? As man, no. As God, yes. Did Jesus know when He was coming back? As God, yes. As man, no. Because that nature, the human nature, was created about 2,000 years ago, but His divine nature always existed. And why would He go around saying, before Abraham was born, I am, if He was not
That was
God?
a direct question to does He know Abraham? That's not a I am.
No, he's quoting from Exodus 3:14. You remember when God appeared to Charlton Heston?
That's not a I am who I am.
Okay. And then, of course, as you know, in John chapter 1, it says, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God." And He became flesh and dwelt among us.
That's also improperly translated. It's in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God.
You sound like a Jehovah's Witness. Are you a Jehovah's Witness?
No, I'm not.
Are you a flat earther?
No, I'm not. But thank you for.
All right, thank you. Good.
Hey, I did write a book,
It's a good question. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.